James Mountain Inhofe was born in Des Moines, Iowa on November 17, 1934. The son of Perry and Blanche Inhofe, the family would move to Tulsa, Oklahoma when Jim was 5 years old. Jim's dad was a claims adjuster. Perry Inhofe had a good friend who was at that time a sports announcer. His name was Ronald Reagan. From a very early age, Jim Inhofe was impressed with Mr. Reagan. This seemingly chance acquaintance would greatly influence James Mountain Inhofe. He would admire Ronald Reagan for the rest of his life. It is no secret that Jim Inhofe is a born-again Christian. His faith is his foundation. It has given direction to his decision-making across his life. By virtue of this transformation, Jim Inhofe gained a clear vision of right and wrong, things that were important and things that were not. He always seemed very comfortable in his own skin. His faith was indomitable. You always knew what to expect from Jim Inhofe. James' middle name was his mother's maiden name, a powerful name indeed. I suppose no one should have been surprised that a man named Mountain would have great confidence. His name seemed to foreshadow a life that would transcend limitation. Drawn to flying at an early age, Jim Inhofe literally soared above the mountains. Jim joined the Army and served his country in uniform in 1957. He would always have a special place in his heart for servicemen and women. No one would do more to protect our Army. Jim grew up in Tulsa, living next door to Kay Kilpatrick. They were childhood friends, never guessing that they would one day wed. Again, Providence led the way. Falling in love with his next-door neighbor, he would marry Kay Kilpatrick in 1959. Kay's love strengthened his foundation and further enabled a long life of service. Their 4 children and 16 grandchildren would be the greatest joy of their lives. Jim's entrepreneurial spirit propelled him to success in the commercial market as a land developer, an aviation executive, and an insurance executive. To the observer, James Mountain Inhofe excelled at everything he did. Jim began his political career in the Oklahoma House of Representatives in 1967. He would subsequently serve in the State Senate from 1969 to 1977. Doing so many things at once, he graduated from the University of Tulsa with a degree in economics in 1973. There was so much to do. Jim served as a mayor of Tulsa from 1978 to 1984. He would subsequently serve in the U.S. House of Representatives from 1987 to 1994. In 1994, he ran for the U.S. Senate in a special election and won. The rest is history. Jim has been a stalwart leader of conservative values. No one has protected our Constitution and our national security more than he. On November 16, 2018, he became Oklahoma's longest-serving senator. Upon retirement, he will have served as Oklahoma's senator for more than 28 years. Senator Inhofe has served on the Senate Armed Services Committee since 1995. He served as the first chairman from Oklahoma from 2018 to 2021. As the chairman of the SASC, he was able to greatly influence the modernization of our Army. Additionally, he is a senior Republican on the Senate Environment and Public Works Committee. Jim has always been a huge advocate for infrastructure modernization and development. He has served in so many important positions: Senate Select Committee on Intelligence, Senate Committee on Indian Affairs, Senate Foreign Relations Committee, Senate Committee on Commerce, Science, and Transportation, and the Senate Committee on Small Business and Entrepreneurship. Across his 58 years of public service, James Mountain Inhofe always worked to set conditions for hard-working Americans to succeed. Senator Inhofe often flew himself to visit his constituents across the state. He has over 11,000 flight hours. He is the only member of Congress to fly around the world when he recreated Wiley Post's trip. He is famous for having demonstrated his expertise as a pilot by flying upside down during an FAA efficiency test. Jim Inhofe is a very caring man. Any of his constituents that have gone to him for assistance know this. They may not know that he serves on the Congressional Coalition on Adoption and has enacted many proposals designed to encourage domestic and international adoption for American families. Jim has visited churches in Africa for many years, working to bring vital resources to depressed areas in Africa. These acts of love are not political. They are rarely recognized by the media. He is beloved across the African continent. In Lawton, Fort Sill, Oklahoma, he has been our greatest advocate. He has protected Fort Sill from base realignment and closure efforts and ensured the post continue to grow in size and importance. We have the two Fires cross-functional teams because of him. We have a research and development and science and technology facility, the FISTA, because of him. Jim saw the amazing opportunity the FISTA would bring. He was pleased that the community was pursuing this capability, but concerned that we might delay our efforts. That is why he came to Lawton Fort Sill to tell us the time is now. He threw down the gauntlet and challenged our community to be all that it can be. In Southwest Oklahoma, we affectionately refer to 911 Inhofe. For years, we have turned to him and his staff whenever we were in peril. He has always been there for us. He has made an amazing contribution to our lives. The service at James Mountain Inhofe has touched the lives of so very many. Thank you so much for making time to visit with us. Always great to see you. We appreciate everything that you do. I know that you have a long history with Senator Jim Inhofe, and I've always enjoyed your stories about your relationship. My favorite story is you were saying the two of you made a dog, and one end wagged and the other end would bite.
Yeah, well, as I often refer to myself, we get a lot of nice comments on, gosh, thanks for doing this for the military, that for the military, because of course we have Fort Sill and Tinker in this district, the two largest single-site employers and two most significant military installations in the state, and two of the more significant installations in the country. But so when I get those thank yous, I always say, just remember, I'm just the tail of a very big dog named Jim, whose teeth are Jim Inhofe, and there's just no question about who is the leader and has been the leader, not just for our state, not just for these installations, but who in Washington, D.C. is looked on as the leader, the number one proponent of and defender of the men and women that wear the uniform of the United States. That's Jim Inhofe. He's got a superb record of leadership, first on the House Armed Services Committee, then on the Senate Armed Services Committee, of course rising to the levels of chairman and ranking member of the most significant things. And he's just one of the most important legislators in Washington, and probably the most important in terms of getting things done.
What has he meant to your political career?
He's been a role model, he's been an advisor, he's been a mentor, and he's certainly been a supporter. I first met Jim Inhofe when he was running for governor in 1974, and I'd just come back from Yale and was starting my academic career here in Oklahoma, got involved a little bit in his campaign, and he's been my client as well as anything. And let me tell you, he pays you very well and on time. I mean, he's a good guy to have a client. But I just think he has shown how to be consistently conservative and simultaneously effective. And I know what members on both sides of the aisle think of Jim Inhofe, how widely he's admired. And that's by people who disagree with him. Because they see him as consistent, they see him as a person of integrity, and they see him as a person that you can strike a deal with. Now, it's going to be a conservative deal, but he's not afraid to spend money on things like infrastructure and the military.
What would you say is Senator Jim Inhofe's biggest impact on America?
Defense, number one. No question that we're a stronger country. Our men and women in uniform are better equipped, better paid, better protected, better served than they would have been had he not been there. And as you know, I think we are in a particularly dangerous period of time. Jim has been warning us about this for a long time, but I think you'd have to say nobody's done more to prepare the United States from challenging times, and to make sure that our potential adversaries think twice before they engage the United States, because we do have the capabilities, we do have the best trained force. But Jim's never taken that for granted. He's never rested on his laurels. He's always recognized that you got to continue to build on it, and that your adversaries aren't standing still. You can't either. So I think that's the number one. And then I would tell you number two is the infrastructure around this country. Jim Inhofe's a conservative, but he certainly believes in building roads, building bridges, building airports, providing the framework that you need for economic activity to take place.
As Senator Inhofe moves to retirement, what would you like to say to him?
Well, first of all, don't go far, because we intend to continue to use you. You know, he's a reservoir of knowledge and wisdom that our whole state, and certainly our whole delegation, been from. And it's not just him. You know, he leaves behind a human network. The Inhofe staff is legendary, quite frankly, for number one, how devoted they are to the Senate, but how capable they are. I've never met a better staff than Jim Inhofe to assemble and direct, and his ability to constantly replace them with new members. And so there's a whole infrastructure of Inhofe people that are still out there. And, all our delegation at one time or another has gone to sit down with Jim Inhofe to get advice on a legislative priority, to get advice on how to work with the Senate, to get advice on what you ought to do career-wise. Because I think we all regard him. He's now the longest-serving member of Congress in Oklahoma history. He served in both chambers. He's held significant leadership spots in both chambers, and he's considered consequential by anybody that served with him. So, pretty remarkable record, and one that all of us would do well to learn from and to emulate.
Thank you so much for your time and sharing with us today. And I look forward to seeing you on 27 October when we celebrate 58 years of service from Senator Jim Inhofe.
I look forward to being there.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hardly anyone is closer to Jim Inhofe than his chief of staff.
Sure.
I mean, you're with him all the time, working everything. What do you think of when you think of Senator Jim Inhofe?
I think of humility. I think of love and persistence. Those would be the three words that come to mind to describe Jim Inhofe. And you see his humility in the way that he invests in other people, the way that he invests in and sacrifices so much to serve. He really is a servant leader and is a servant senator, and has done an incredible job of not just providing for what Oklahoma needs, but also just being a wonderful example and a wonderful leader of the kind of people, the kind of person that people can really look up to. And his humility, he never thinks that he's going to be the creator of every good idea, right? He listens, and he because of that, he's so wise, because he knows about all the things that are going on, and he's eager to hear from other people. Everything that he does is for other people. And so that, in my mind, that's what love is, right? You're always trying to serve and provide for the needs of other people. And I see him doing that in the way that he cares for his family, the way that he's cared for me as one of his employees, the way that he cares for all of his staff and former staff. He is a man who is a family man, and his family is far bigger than his biological family. Because once you know Jim Inhofe, he adopts you into his family. There's nothing quite like it. And then his persistence. That's the number one thing that Jim Inhofe brings to a fight that wears everybody else down. Mm-hmm. And it's why he's been so successful, because he is so focused on getting the job done, and he won't ever stop until it gets done. Even if it takes 10 years, he'll keep going after it. And so those are three things that I would say describe Jim Inhofe.
What was it like being his chief of staff?
It was a blast. Yeah. It was an honor. And invariably, as a person who is a staffer and anybody who's in a job, you screw things up sometimes. And certainly as working for him, I screwed things up sometimes. And what was amazing about working for Jim is that I could always be honest with him about where things were. I knew that there was total security in working with him because he was on my team. He was for me. I worked for him, but he wanted me to be successful. He wanted everyone who works for him to be successful. And he provided this safety net of love that made it easy to work for him. It made it a fun thing to work for him. And the culture of any office, it's set by the leadership. And that's the culture that permeates his office, is that everyone is looking out for each other because he's looking out for us. And so whenever you may screw something up, you just tell him, look, I screwed this up and here's what we're doing to fix it. I'm sorry that I did that. But he was always quick to overlook offenses, right? Things that didn't go quite right, mistakes, whatever. And he was always very quick to just celebrate victories. He always took the blame when something went wrong, and then he gave the fame away whenever something went right. And you think about the kind of leadership that Jesus demonstrates, and I think Jim Inhofe got a lot of his cues from him, and that shows in the way that his team comes together and just loves working with him. He never has people leave the office. They work for him forever because he's such a great guy to work for.
That's a wonderful compliment, isn't it? As Senator Inhofe begins retirement, what message do you have?
Thank you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for what you invested in me and the opportunities that you've given me. And I think thank you from the state of Oklahoma for all that you've sacrificed to really serve this state so well. We could not ask for a better leader than you. We will miss you and your steady hand, your true north, and the kind of perseverance and love and humility that you have brought to the table. And so you are going to be sorely missed. And I will personally sorely miss working with you every day, at least in the capacity that I did. But maybe we can still work on some Africa projects together. So thank you.
In Southwest Oklahoma, we are really going to miss Jim Inhofe. Yeah. And I know that you've had the pleasure to work with him for some time. And I'd just like to ask you, when you think of Jim Inhofe, what comes to mind and what has he meant to you?
So I think Jim Inhofe would describe himself as a Jesus guy. That's his favorite term for himself. As a family guy who's deep love for Kay, for his wife, for his kids, grandkids, great-grandkids, deep love for his family on this. But then after all that, as a senator, it'd be national defense and infrastructure. He spent his career since 1995 being in the Senate working on national defense and infrastructure. We've been the beneficiary of that as a state. The post, the bases around our state have had incredible gains based on the work that Jim Inhofe has done for a very long time. Our infrastructure in our state has had tremendous gain based on the work that he has actually done. So he will be very, very missed in the Senate in our state. It's good to have new blood coming in, but it's also really good to have experienced folks that are there. And so I say that to say he'll be missed as being that experienced person. Now, we understand full well from my wife and I, we've been in the Senate 8 years. It's time for us to be able to step into those same roles and to be able to make sure that we're watching out for those things. I've already worked a lot on national defense. I've worked a lot on infrastructure, all those things as well. But the thumbprint in our state for the past several decades now has really been Inhofe's thumbprint. And what he'll leave there will be great next.
How has he shaped you across time?
So it's interesting is everybody's different in this. When I came into the Senate in 2015, I sat down with Jim and I said, listen, I want to just tell you up front, I know I'm the junior senator, you're the senior senator. I get that. Let's find ways to be able to work together on some things. And when we disagree, let's talk about it, the two of us, and let's work that out, because we're not always going to agree on everything. Let's figure it out together between the two of us. And what I got back from him was an immediate, that's how I want to be able to work. And so we've had this really close working relationship. Our staff has, he and I have, and it's been good to be able to see. But I'm a Jesus person as well. I'm also a person that's very passionate about my family, and having that good relationship with Jim has really been positive. I'll tell you one of my favorite stories with Jim when I first elected into the Senate in 2014, that year. before I actually came to the Senate, I was over at the Senate. I was in a whole group, and Jim looked at everybody that was standing around there, and he said, "Hey, I want y'all to meet the new junior senator that's working with me. His name's James Langford. Together, we're 65 years old." I just laughed. Never forgot that from Jim. And it's just his sense of humor and his engagement and his relationships across the aisle really made a difference.
Yeah, as he now goes into retirement, do you have a message for him?
Oh, thank you is really my message to Jim Inhofe. Thanks for the way that you've served the state and your engagement and your tenacity on conservative principles. He's been this pro-Second Amendment, pro-life, pro-family, pro-government doing its job kind of guy for decades, and our state and our nation's been a recipient of that.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
My name is Ken Camper at the historic Sherman House on Fort Sill.
And I'm Steve Burnley, the Command Sergeant Major here at the Fire Center of Excellence.
Our message is simple, but genuine and heartfelt. Thank you, Senator Inhofe. Thank you for more than 60 years of service to our country. Most of you probably know that Senator Inhofe is an Army veteran, and like many of the young people we have going through basic training here at Fort Sill, Senator Inhofe has said that his Army experience changed his life, and he wouldn't be the person he is today without the discipline that comes from being in the Army. Thank you, sir, for your commitment.
As a soldier for life, you have always shown a commitment to the military in the state of Oklahoma, Fort Sill, and across our Army. You've worked tirelessly to improve the quality of life for our soldiers and their families, truly embodying the people first and winning matters.
Senator Inhofe, your leadership, efforts, and results leave a legacy of positive impact which will last for many decades. You, sir, are a great American, and we are grateful for all that you have done.
Senator Inhofe, this one's for you. Woo!
Fire strong.
First of all, thank you all so much for making time to come and visit with us at the studio. It's always a great pleasure to sit down with the Mayor of Lawton, Fort Sill, Stan Booker, and CASA South, Civilian Aide to Secretary of the Army, Mike Brown. As you all know, for, well, a few months now, we've been talking about how to adequately say thank you to Senator James Mountain Inhofe. Mm-hmm. You know, we've worked on it a long time, and we've talked a lot about what he means to our nation and what he means to our state. But today I'd like us to bring it home and talk about what he means to Lawton, Fort Sill. And I'll start with you, Mike. If you would please, when you think about the senator and his influence on Fort Sill and the Fire Center of Excellence, what comes to mind?
Heart. Jim Inhofe has a huge heart. He has a heart for our military, has a heart for our Army, and has a heart for Fort Sill. You know, he served in formation, and ever since then, I think his love for our Army has shown through in all of his actions. He's been so involved with our Army over the years in any elected office that he has held, and culminating now with being a senator for so many years. We have all felt the love from his heart and what it meant to our Army, to Oklahoma, and especially Lawton, Fort Sill, where he has continuously supported us in so many ways. And so I think we feel the love from Jim Inhofe, and it's only right that we show him some love back.
Yeah, it is our pleasure to return that love. He has meant so much to Fort Sill and the Fire Center over time, ensuring that our mission grows and our post grows. He's meant a lot to the city too, hasn't he, Mr. Mayor?
You know, he absolutely has, and I'll tell you, Mike talks about Fort Sill. Well, we're Lawton, Fort Sill, and from an economics point of view, as well as an individual person point of view, the lifeblood of Lawton is Fort Sill. So everything that he's done there is so important. You know, and I think about things like the virtual center that's there, and I think about Freedom Elementary School. But you know, because of the senator, we have a piece of the Futures Command at Fort Sill that opened up tremendous opportunity for our community to build high-tech jobs so that our children would have high-tech jobs here, right here at home where they want to live. Without the senator, we wouldn't have had that. And then when the FISTA idea came about, to provide those high-tech jobs, to provide support for the Futures Command that the senator got here, the senator was in full support. Without Senator Inhofe, there would be no FISTA.
That's right. It's a very exciting time to be living in Lawton, Fort Sill, Oklahoma. So much going on. I mean, you can really feel it. This community has turned the corner. We're embracing opportunity. And so much of that was enabled by Senator Inhofe.
Absolutely.
Yes, sir.
Senator Inhofe, from the bottom of our hearts, we say thank you.
Senator Inhofe, still recovering from long COVID, was able to join a small group for lunch today, and we were finally able to show our appreciation for his lifetime of service in person. Following the tribute film, Senator Inhofe was inducted into the Ancient Order of St. Barbara. Lieutenant General Dave Halverson, the president of the Field Artillery Association, did the honors. Clarence Fortney, chairman of the board for the FISTA Authority, announced that the FISTA would be renamed the Senator James Mountain Inhofe Fires Innovation, Science, and Technology Accelerator, so that no one will ever forget that Senator Inhofe championed this great innovation. Finally, the Fires chapter of AUSA presented the Lifetime Service Award to Senator Inhofe. Senator Inhofe was deeply moved by the proceedings. He said no other community in Oklahoma has honored him so richly. He expressed again how special Lawton Fort Sill is to him and how proud he is of our community. And he asked for a copy of the tribute film to share with his wife, Kay. It is our wish that Senator Inhofe always remembers our tribute fondly and never forgets that his friends in Lawton Fort Sill deeply appreciate his lifetime of service.